Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very, very much for joining me today. I have got a hell of a treat in for you today, and I'm so excited to be able to welcome back into the two favourite hot seats that we have in David Kirk and Wayne Barnes. They've both interrupted their busy World Cup schedules to spend time with us today. David is a former Premiership match official and matchday host for Wasps, and David's global rugby contacts and sporting knowledge and rapport with players means he is frequently approached to host sporting events and benefit evenings for the high-profile players. So thanks very much for joining us, David. His humour, in fact, and wit have seen him write and perform numerous productions on the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I think those of you that joined us last time really enjoyed his humour and jibes as well, David. I think he's written and produced such comedies as Flyerman, Flyerman 2, this time it's funny, and Flyerman 3, Masters in Disguise. He is also a highly successful moderator and after-dinner speaker, and even an auctioneer. Who knew, Kirky, huh? Who knew? And then standing in David's shadow is Wayne Barnes, an international referee on our television screens for decades. He first appeared on our screens back in 2003, and I don't even think you had facial hair back then, Barnesy, but nice to see it's been coming along and coming along well in the successive years. He's now in the middle of refereeing his 5th World Cup. And in 2022, he refereed his 250th Premiership rugby match and his 101st Test match, surpassing Nigel Owen's record when he refereed South Africa versus France in Marseille. Over the years, he's seen it all from 100-minute matches, France versus Wales in the last weekend of the 2017 Six Nations, and to being awarded Referee of the Year 2019, to having a urinal named after him in New Zealand, to having a streaker in an elephant G-string interrupt his first Premiership match. It wasn't me. Known for his exceptional communication skills, even in French, enabling players and fans to keep up with what's happening. He spends his time off the pitch as a barrister. And I need to just clarify for our South African audience, a barrister isn't someone who makes your cappuccino. It is, in fact, an attorney in our language. And he is a partner in a London law firm. He's refereed every final there is out there except the World Cup final. Is this the year for you, Barnesy, huh? Let's chat to both David and Wayne and understand what it takes to survive 20 years at the top of the game. And guys, please do put your questions in the chat. Obviously, they'll be filtered, but you're very, very welcome to put your questions in the chat, and we'll see what we can get to towards the end of the session. I'm Georgina Smith. I'm head of distribution for INN8 and your regular host on these webinars. And 20 years ago, I used to do a bit of refereeing with these two reprobates. So welcome, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Well, George, hi. And can I just say, what the hell are you wearing?
Did you not get the memo? It's Boca Friday.
I'm telling you. Yeah. I've actually got my England England G-string on, but I'm not going to show you.
No, please don't. No, it's a big thing here in South Africa. Boca Friday, the whole country dresses up, and I couldn't resist surprising you today with. I was actually
going to bring up a light to show you here as to what top to wear and what move you need to move next. Actually, to be honest with you, but I decided not to. But George, thank you, and George, you're a great friend of somebody's, I'm sure. And Barnesy, great to see you. How are you, buddy?
It's wonderful to see you both. Great to hear from you, George. Kirky, I'm not quite sure I'm looking forward to hearing from you, if I'm honest. But no, I'm in Paris. I was in Lyon last night for New Zealand versus Uruguay, so I dashed back on the TGV, and I'm sure any of the people on these calls who have been into Paris and France for this tournament will know how amazing the trains are around here, getting you to and from. So nice early start this morning to make sure I'm back in time for you, George, and of course you, Kirky. So delighted.
What more?
Monty, I need to say like a massive thank you for last night. You put me top of the leaderboards in all my Super Brews. I said New Zealand would win by 70 points. You did me proud. Thank you very much.
Well, if you would have asked me before, George, I could have told you to score,
Yeah, well, exactly. And that actually, Barnsley, it leads me on to a question. All you referees have been out here for a while now. Have you decided who the winner of the World Cup is yet?
Mate, I could tell you now, but we like to build the excitement.
Fair enough.
Kirky, what a weekend ahead. Okay, obviously everyone in South Africa, they're watching the Ireland versus Scotland game. They've got their abacuses out trying to work out what needs to happen. But that's an amazing game over in the Stade de France. Japan versus Argentina for different reasons. That's knockout rugby. Someone is going home from that game, so that'll be full of kind of passion, but also full of tension. But also tonight, just remember that France have to win tonight against Italy down in Lyon. And this is a good French team, a very good, mature French team, but they don't have their leader with them. They don't have Dupont. So it's going to be an interesting night. Like the next 3 days, I think we're going to see the real start of this World Cup. I think it's going to be bloody entertaining. And then quarterfinals next weekend. We could see, South Africa versus France. We could see Ireland versus New Zealand. And obviously we'll see England march on to the semi-finals.
Absolutely. And of course, exactly. It's fascinating. A lot of these weekends I've been hosting Q&As at various events with old England international, particularly those who, for those of you who are young enough, remember that we won it 20 years ago back in Australia against the Australians. Who cares? I always say to these guys, you don't want England to win because you'll get another 4 years dinners out of this. If we don't win, you'll still be the last World Cup winners. But Barnsley, it must be difficult for you in a way watching England going, because you there's a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. You don't want them to get to the final, do you?
I'll be really honest with you. So 2019, I refereed South Africa versus Japan in the quarterfinals. In South Africa, close first half, turned the screw a little bit in the second half. At the end of the quarterfinals, we were told, who were doing the semi-finals, and I was told, assuming England didn't get there, I would be refereeing the World Cup final. But England performed, and went along to Yokohama Stadium on that Saturday evening and played one of the best games of rugby that I've seen an England team play. And I was in there cheering them on. I realised, Kirky, that England being successful is going to do a lot more for the English game and the game of rugby in our country than me refereeing it. So, like everyone on this call, I love rugby. I'm passionate about rugby, and I want England to do well. They're the team I've grown up with. Fair enough. If England don't make it, who knows? But I will be cheering them on in the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and hoping that they do well. Some things you can control, some things you can't.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, actually, you talked about the New Zealand-Uruguay game, and it was, 73-0, I think. How difficult is that to referee? Because you've got to be equitable to both sides. And there must be a feeling somewhere along of, I feel sorry for Uruguay, I want to level it up for them a little bit, with this great, as we have in the UK at the moment, levelling up ministers. But I just wondered how difficult it is compared to, say, a South Africa versus Ireland, where it's full on between both sides. What's the difference between those sort of two types of games?
I think there's two things. First of all, you only referee those kind of games every 4 years. So the last time I refereed Uruguay was in the 2019 World Cup against Georgia, and it was about 43 degrees centigrade and about 90 degrees humidity. So that was challenging in itself. But what you don't do in that interim period, you don't referee many what would have been called tier 1 versus tier 2 nations. You do the South Africans against New Zealand. You do Australia against Argentina. So they are much of a muchness. And so you just referee, you go out there. Whereas like last night is making sure, one, the players are safe, and if you've seen some of the scrums, there was a clear mismatch at the scrums. So you've got to make sure the scrums are safe, you've got to make sure the players are safe. But you've also got to make sure you don't piss off either side. One, by going too hard and being too technical, but also making sure that the team who are winning by 50 or 60 points get to play their rugby. It's not for me to decide who's going to win and by how many. So all I'll try and do is just get the real big stuff which really matters, but making sure that the players are safe as you do that.
So you've known your fixtures, I think, since the beginning of the first weekend in terms of the group games. How much planning ahead have you done for those, or do you literally, the old adage of we take it one game at a time? But because a lot of people joining, and welcome to, I think, 900 people joining us for this webinar. How many? And a lot of them would probably want to shake you warmly by the throat, Wayne, but that's a different conversation. But I just wonder how much planning you do in advance, and how much in terms of preconceived ideas you might have, because you would obviously look at New Zealand, Uruguay and think, well, that's a New Zealand win. So how much of that goes on?
So you turn around quite quickly in a World Cup. So if you think about a normal test window, a November window where it's every weekend, and you probably don't referee every weekend, but I'm going to be working at the Scotland Ireland match tomorrow on touch. So that will be my 7th game in about 4 weeks. So you've got to prepare quite quickly, because people think, I know most people think we just rock up, turn up, spoil their afternoon, and then go home and just carry on with our lives. But there's a lot of preparation that goes into each game. Understanding how a team's going to play. How they're going to scrummage, how they line out, where do they exit from, how do they exit. And the reason we look at that is to stop us blowing the whistle, because the best games of rugby, I think, are the games that don't stop. They have momentum, they have flow, and what you can, you don't want to see lots of reset scrums. We don't want to see lots of players injured. We want to see the game go and go and go. And so if I can do my prep and work out, well, actually, this is what team A does in these situations, and they just really kind of tread really close to the margins at the line out. So I can say to them, in the week leading up to it, right, I know you contest in the air, but you bump the player before you contest with the ball. Any chance you can just change that little bit? All of a sudden, I don't have to blow my whistle 2 or 3 times during a match. And all of a sudden,
because actually that's what you're aiming to do, is to blow it as little as possible, I'm guessing.
Yeah, if I can blow the game 0 times during a match, it's close to the perfect game. I've only ever done that once, Kirky. I have refereed 1 match with 0 penalties. It's my favorite game of all times. It was.
Who was it, Barnsey?
Well, I was meant to be refereeing Racing Metro, who were based in Paris, against Munster that weekend, but it was called off because there were some terrorist attacks in Paris that weekend. And so I got a call on the Tuesday to say, game's off, we don't have enough police to guarantee the safety of the players or the officials, so game's off. Of course, made total sense. But this was a Tuesday. I had nothing, family are away on the Saturday, so I thought, well, I'll just see if I can get a local game. You know that I'm a member of that great refereeing entity that is the London Society of Referees.
We all grew up there.
Yeah.
We all cut our teeth there, right?
Exactly.
What did you get? Charlton Park Fourth versus
Parkhurst? Well, almost. I rang up first of all on a Tuesday and said, is there any chance of a game? And they first of all said, we'll see. And then on the Thursday, I got a call to say, Wayne, we've appointed you to London French versus Kilburn Cosmos. And London French play down at Barnes, which is a bus drive from where I live.
It's not your estate, is it?
No, not yet, Kirky. I got the bus down so I could have a couple of beers afterwards. I was greeted by the chairman, who was called Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre said, "Oh, Wayne, thank you very much for coming. Here's your change room. Could we have a moment silence before the match?" I thought that would be great. Yeah, of course we can. So the 2 teams joined in a circle around the centre spot, all intertwined. We invited all the spectators onto the pitch, all 12 of them. Then Jean-Pierre said a few words. We had a moment's silence, and then the captain of Kilburn Cosmos presented the captain of London French with a bouquet of flowers in the tricolour colours. Really nice touch. We kicked off, and then 80 minutes later, after a lot of management, I blew my final whistle without giving a single penalty. And I was greeted by Jean-Pierre, who gave me a glass of Chablis and a beret with London French on it, and I was man of the match.
I hope you were fined hideously for that offence.
But there is a slight postscript to that, isn't there? Because in 2007, you were...
Oh, we've lost Kirky.
INN8 on that relates to you and a World Cup quarter-final, your first World Cup, actually, and everybody thought that you allowed the French to beat New Zealand. And suddenly in the press in New Zealand, what happened after that game for the London French?
Oh yeah, so yeah, New Zealanders took a while to forgive me for the way that they lost in 2007. As you said, Kirsty,
Years,
I
I think it was, wasn't it?
yeah, I was a referee when they lost in the quarterfinal against France in Cardiff. And I was mentioned in the year afterwards in the national parliament twice. I have an effigy of me burnt in Christchurch. And in 2007, I was actually named the third most hated man in New Zealand.
What an accolade. Is that where the urinal came from, huh?
Yeah, then as part of that, they built a urinal of a bust of my head that you could go to in a bar in Queenstown called Cowboys. You could literally piss on me. And then yeah, so when I've had that berry, and I told that story at a dinner once. And I put the berry on and showed everyone, and someone in the crowd took out their phone and took a photo. And the next day in the New Zealand Herald, the heading was "We told you so."
So there you are. Look,
Yaku Paper fell foul of that a little bit in Japan, didn't he, with the French last World Cup, right? You got to be so careful what you do and who snaps you, right?
Oh yeah, you got to be careful on those dodgy apps, George. You got to be careful.
Let's not go into that. We've got to actually our audience.
Talking about those reserve games, those reserve games where you something's been cancelled and you go on reserve and you pick up whatever's coming along your way. That's how I met my husband, because I picked up a reserve game of Guy's Hospital versus Gillingham. And it was a terrible, terrible day. It was a disgusting weather. It was February. And I turned up on the pitch, and I think there were 3 spectators. 2 of those were Rottweilers. And it was really a bunch of really gypsies, I suppose, playing quite posh doctors. And sure enough, we ended in with quite a few red cards, one of those to my future husband. So
sorry, which team was he playing for? The gypsies or the doctors? He was
playing for the Guy's Hospital team.
But actually, Wayne, it leads on to a kind of a serious point, because that could affect a lot of people playing in a game, refereeing a game like that and getting that reaction afterwards. And I'm just wondering, there was, you look at Craig Joubert, the Scotland game back in the 2015 World Cup. I know you had your own pressures after the 2022 France South Africa, and I'm sure a lot of people on the call will remember that. But I just wondered how you deal with that pressure, because we all come under pressure at work, and how does it manifest itself for you, and what techniques do you have for dealing with it? Sorry, I've switched speakers because the other ones were running out of battery. Not me, just
we can hear you just fine, Kirky. It's no problem. That's cool.
So pressure. So part of this job is dealing with the pressure, and there's lots of people who want to give you advice. You have to accept that, whether you've just started off your refereeing at your local third team, where you'll get some spectators who will give you some encouragement, or whether it's a coach after a match, or whether it's selectors who decide who go to the World Cup. The one thing I've learned over the last,
I just say, no coach ever rings you up and says, "Thanks, you won that game for us."
No, I'll tell you a story about the 2019 World Cup in a moment, about what happened after.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry.
Oh no, because I get your point around. Very rarely, do you get the man of the match award, or does a coach send you through a load of clips to say well done? But what I've learned over the last, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years, is putting people around you whose opinion you trust, but also people who will challenge you, because you can't listen to everything. It doesn't matter what job you're in, whether that may be a lawyer. I'm in a massive UK LLP with hundreds of partners. If you listen to everyone's opinion, you would do nothing. You would just freeze. So what
is it you specialise in, Barnsley? What is it you specialise in?
Bribery and corruption, Kirky.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Actually, your nickname's Sapphire, isn't it? Because you lose half your cases. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway.
Very good. But I've got 4 or 5 people around me whose opinion I really trust, I really respect. Not all just referees. I've got one ex-international referee who I would sit on my personal board, if that's the best way of describing it. I've got an ex-international scrummage coach who helps me prepare and review every game from a scrummage point of view. An ex-international but current international coach who helps me understand what teams may play by, and a sports psychologist, and a good friend who just understands rugby but understands when I'm under pressure. So all of those 5 people will help me review that game from last night. They'll send in their thoughts, and then you know where you need to tweak. Me going onto social media to find out what other people think does not help me. It's not going to make me a better person. It's not going to make me a better referee. I'm sure it'll make someone who's sitting at home feel a lot better to vent. But having a really clear on whose opinions I really respect but also need is really important to me.
But you look, you are only human at the end of the day, and I just and we all get affected by some of the things we hear, and it's inevitable that someone's going to see you in a bar when they're drunk or whatever, and I guess you sort of think, well, they were drunk, but there will be people who come up with things that perhaps upset you. I mean, for instance, I know you were due to get your award at Twickenham for your 100th international. You weren't able to do it because there were fears as to what the crowd reaction would be. So you are only human. How do you deal with something like that, for instance?
Well, the background to it, and I guess is dragging over old news, and some people know this. But in November of last year, I refereed my 100th game, which was only the second referee to referee 100 games when Wales played New Zealand. It was an amazing day. My 2 kids walked me to the stadium. So any of you who've been to Cardiff, first of all, it's the best stadium in the world. I love Newlands. I love Kings Park. I've had some amazing games up at Johannesburg. But Cardiff is the best stadium in the world. The noise, the atmosphere, be able to walk to the stadium is what makes it really special.
If only it wasn't for the Welsh, though. But there you are.
You can say
careful, you're sounding like Eddie Jones.
Oh, mate, no worries, mate.
I stayed in Cardiff the night before, and then my kids came down and walked me to the stadium. So who gets their kids to walk them to work? To be involved in Wales versus the All Blacks. There's so much history on that game. They walked me to the ground, gave me a big high five, goodbye, wish me luck, and then they watched the game. The Welsh Rugby Union were immense. They put Polly and the kids in a lovely little part of the ground, looked after them, gave them hot dogs and popcorn until it came out their ears. And in the post-match, they invited the kids in to the post-match reception. The All Blacks actually invited me into the change room post-match, presented me with 2 bottles of wine signed by their Centurions. So real nice.
Lovely.
Yeah, real nice.
Very
touch.
nice.
And then in the post-match ceremony, the captain that day was Justin Tipperick. He got up, said a few words, and presented me with something very special from the Welsh Rugby Union. I ended up singing a song in front of all the Alakadoos, as you do.
What was it?
What was it?
It's Sloop John B. Always my go-to song. The ref song of choice over in Paris at the moment. So an amazing 100th game. Now, the 101st game didn't kind of go with me being under the radar. I ended up sending off Steph du Toit, who was, I think, the World Player of the Year in 2019. And then I sent off Anton Dupont, the World Rugby Player of the Year in 2020.
Well, to be fair, you were Referee of the Year in 2019 as well. So there's a kind of
I
joined up, really.
Yeah, I don't think I think some people would have wanted to send me off on that. So I knew after that game that there was going to be some controversy, because you make decisions like that, and it's a tight game, and you've got number 1 versus number 2 in the world, the Six Nations champions against the world champions. There's always going to be some fallout. And I'm on Twitter and I'm on other social media bits. And I do that for 2 reasons. 1, to promote refereeing, and 2, to promote my work with charity. I think it's really important that people see the work that referees do away from the game. And always after matches, you'll get some advice and some abuse. But after that game on the Saturday night, there was a little bit. And then the coach of South Africa made some comments on his own personal Twitter account, which suggested I got a load of things wrong. And on the back of that, I had a torrent of abuse. I had a torrent of abuse, which is part of the job as a referee. I choose to be a referee. I accept. Whether I think it's outrageous that anyone thinks that they can just pick up their phone and send anyone abusive messages, but I understand that the world that we live in. But for the first time, my wife got threats of sexual violence. My kids got threats to be physically harmed. People were saying that they were going to wait for my children outside their school. So that takes it to a different level. And I thought it was outrageous. And I think it shows that people in positions of responsibility have to uphold what we cherish as part of our game, the values of our game that we talk about so much. Because as soon as people in positions of, responsibility, positions of trust say it's okay to criticize in a public arena, then other people say, well, if head coaches can do that, why can't I? And criticism, we know, quickly becomes abuse. And what happened in this occasion is abuse became actually, ridiculous kind of threats of violence and just outrageous abuse. So it is part. Unfortunately, it's become part of the job. I don't read the press. It's the one thing I've been really good at over here. Is not reading press. I don't want to know what people think about the game. It's not relevant. What I want to know is how I can help kind of allow that game to break open, to allow it to flow, to make sure that the teams kind of decide the outcomes. Me knowing what a journalist from Midi Olympic thinks is irrelevant, or from the Sydney Herald is irrelevant. So I'm really clear on that. I don't put my name into Google and type Wayne Barnes, because I'm sure there's not some very, very nice things out there.
Well, I've put a few things up there, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
yes, right.
I think you rewrote my Wikipedia, Kirky. But it's
actually, no, Barnsley,
sorry.
can I just interrupt you there, because I mean, it was a terrible time for you. I know I spoke to you during that time, and it was a very a very sad time for the game, especially as you rightly say. It was a time where I think the values of the game were compromised, the values that I think we all enjoyed when we played or refereed rugby, where it's such an inclusive and respectful game. Suddenly it became something that really we've never experienced before. What some of the things, and a few questions coming in on the questions here. One of the things that was said at the time was the South African coach Rassie felt that he'd been through the normal process, and I'd love to hear a bit more about what this process is that coaches go through after a game, and he felt that it wasn't working for him, and I don't know whether that's true or not, but that was certainly something that was touted at the time, and he felt that the only place for him to go after that was Twitter, and as I think we all know, he did it in quite a passive aggressive way, and
drunk, did you say?
So yeah, I think it was a very difficult time, I think, for the game. But I'd love to hear a bit more about the process that coaches can go through when they have a grievance and how that gets played out. And then the other questions that are coming in are about how you get reviewed and how you get assessed, and what actually happens in that respect. Can you perhaps touch on those two things for us?
Yeah, I think if I just tell you what happens in the next 24 to 48 hours after my game yesterday. So I've already watched that game. I will have the four of us who were involved in that game have reviewed that game together. And trust me, we are our harshest critics. We are harsher than any coach, any selector, any fan, because we want to get better. We want to improve. So all of those things are done. We've got an idea of what that game looks like, what we need to, what we've done well, but also, the little bits that we need to improve on. Then I'll sit down with my selector, who is the South African Craig Joubert for this match. Craig's one of our selectors for this World Cup. Someone who I have a huge amount of respect for as a referee, but a great friend of mine, someone who I grew up with through the 7 series, and then we were at 07, 11 and 15 World Cup together. So I really enjoy reviewing with Craig, because he does really hold you to account. So there will be the official review, and then all of the coaches, so the Uruguayan coach and the New Zealand coach get to send in their feedback and ask questions, and we will reply to those. So in the next 48 hours, they will get those responses. The tweet came out on the Sunday after the game on the Saturday. So, I think that probably gives you an understanding of, the
what
way.
Time on the Sunday was it? Was it in the early hours? I'm just asking for a friend, that's all. Let's not go there. But
and that's what will happen at every, and I'm more than happy. And I have done this many times, after a match, if a coach wants to meet me afterwards, if we're in the same vicinity. So, for example, during the Lions series, I came down for the 2021 Lions series. And after every game, we had a call with either the provincial coach or the South African A coaches. There were some games, or the Lions coaches, within 48 hours of that. So there was an ability to sit down with us in a certain time frame to have that chat with us. That's always open to coaches.
But is it a question of allowing a cooling off period? Because, if you allow a coach into your dressing room straight after the final whistle, it's not going to be an objective conversation, is it? So is there a minimum time of which you say to them, okay, we won't talk to you until Monday or Sunday evening or whatever?
Yeah, look, the referee's changing room is a sanctuary. Yeah, it's you don't want people to come in there for many reasons. One, because it looks, it could look from an integrity point of view pretty average. You imagine, the winning coach coming out of a match official's changing room. But also we don't want people to, undermine the values of the game. And we all know we're emotional after games. Referees, believe it or not, have a little bit of emotion in there. We're not just there, ruining your afternoon. So there's a reason why that happens. And there's a reason that, because I need to have watched the video before I can comment. Someone said, well, that was a tackle, not a maul. Okay.
Which is always going to have their spin on it, which is to their advantage.
And so all I can say is what I gave at the time is what I saw. Now, you show me a clip, in the next 24 hours, once I've had time to have a shower, get in the ice bath and see if I can get these legs working again, then I'll give you my comments. So we don't hide from those conversations, but there has to be a right time and right place for it. I tell you a story and just jump up a little bit about a post-match. So, and it's still one of my favorite memories of my international career is after the World Cup final, obviously in 2019, as most people on this call will remember, was between South Africa and England. And I was given the fourth place playoff between New Zealand and Wales. And we finished the game uncontroversial. New Zealand, very impressive that day. Wales were kind of taping up their players towards the end of that tournament. And we got back into our change room. Jaco Piper was on touch for me. And some other good friends were on touch for me that day. So we had a couple of beers in our own change room because that was the end of our World Cup. We knew that was our last game. And off we went afterwards, little wheelie bag behind us. And as we were walking past the exit to the stadium, the Warren Gatland and Steve Hansen were walking from the Wales change room towards the New Zealand change room. And they said, "Oh, what are you up to?" And we said, "Well, we're just going to go and drop our bags and we'll probably go for a few glasses of wine in Tokyo." They said, "Well, why don't you come into our change room? Warren and some of the Welsh players are going to come into the New Zealand change room for a beer. We'd love you to come and join us." So me and my little team ended up going into the change room with the Welsh coaches, New Zealand coaches. There are a lot of the Welsh players, the Dan Biggers, the Ken Owens, the Wyn Joneses, but also the New Zealand players. There was a lot of them who it was their last game. So the likes of Kieran Reid played his last game, the likes of Conrad Smith, all of those players who were sitting there, and just to be inside that environment again. Those special memories about when the game is so good. That's a bit that people don't always see, and don't see that relationship between the wrestling players and coaches. So something like that there's still a lot of good in this game, Kirky.
Well, I think there is, and I think a great testament to you. You mentioned earlier about the charity work, and a lot of people maybe will not know, but Polly, your wife's mother, died sadly from breast cancer, and you do a lot every year. You put on a game every year down in the Forest of Dean. If you haven't been to the Forest of Dean, don't go. But it's you get so many ex-international players who come along and play in that charity match, and you've had international coaches, Warren Gatland, Eddie Jones, and so on, who've come down to coach, so to speak, the charity teams. It's a great testament to you, and actually how the values of the game are held high in that respect. And it's not just about winning; it's about doing good and helping each other out. Look, I want to change, if I can.
Hold on, Kirky. While you mentioned the charity, let me just give it a little bit of a
breast cancer now.
Breast cancer now, but also you'll see over the next couple of days. Next week, there is a fundraising event that all the law firms in London do. It's called Tour de Law. It's a bit of a take on Tour de France. where all the big law firms in London get 2 watt bikes delivered, and they have to cycle. It's a competition against them. How far can you cycle on those 2 watt bikes in 48 hours? And you have to split it over 15-minute kind of segments. So
Lucky you're here then, isn't it?
well,
Yes,
interesting
you
you say
skipped
that. So the refs have challenged all the law firms. So you can race the refs. So all the refs on Wednesday, we're going to do all of our kind of it's 12 hours worth of cycling, 12 hours of cycling in one day.
Brilliant.
We're going to do, and we're going to set a total so everyone can come and kind of take us on. So we're going to be raising money through breast cancer now. That's going to go live over the next couple of probably the next 24 hours. So if you do want to support breast cancer now, wherever you are in the world, if you go onto my Twitter page, you will see a link to be able to support Rate the Refs. So Race the Refs, and you'll be made
Rate the refs.
Yeah,
Rate the refs. Don't rate the refs.
Don't rate.
You know where
Rate
you're
the
going.
refs as well.
And definitely don't hate the refs either.
But you will be able to make a donation to an amazing charity.
Oh, that's brilliant,
amazing.
Barnesy.
And I'm guessing if people went to breastcancernow.org or .co.uk or whatever it is, there'll be a link to it there as well. So just race the refs. Remember that on Breast Cancer Now. Fantastic you work there, the work you're doing there. You mentioned also earlier about Sloop John B being the refs' song of choice. And I just wondered, you've been together for probably 8 or 9 weeks now, and you're kind of in a bubble. You said you don't read the media, and I'm guessing your colleagues don't either as well, as well. How has that been? Because it's a long time to spend with people you know quite well, but actually, it's a long time to live under the same roof. I know you're all going out all over the place, but is it fun? Is it good? Is it disastrous? What is it?
We're a close group. So you get close, particularly over the last 4 years. This team has grown and evolved. There are a lot of people who I would class as close mates within that group, and we have there's 6 English referees here, so people who I work with day in, day out. So we are a close group. You have to remember as well that we all kind of have our little kind of different trails during a World Cup. So some people are refereeing on a Thursday, some are refereeing on a Sunday. So you're kind of during different weeks you will spend more time with different people. So I
guess you might not see someone for 7 or 8 days as well.
Exactly right. So that's lovely in that you kind of build your little teams and your friendship groups and go out for dinner. But there's a bit of structure to the week. So if you take a normal week, well, on Mondays we will all be in reviewing our games with our selectors. As I mentioned, there'll be a recovery session, particularly for the older ones who need a bit of putting back together, and then like a strength and conditioning session, more about body protection rather than actually going to hammer it. Tuesday.
Do you have a physio on site, Wayne?
We got a physio on site and a strength and conditioning coach on site, and then on Tuesday we'll have the kind of selectors present to us. Part of that selection committee is an ex-international scrummage coach in Mike Cron, who was the scrum coach for New Zealand for 2 of their World Cup wins. So he will help lead those discussions around the scrum. But Joel Jout, who is the head of officiating, he will lead the discussions around how we're doing, and see if there are any themes, and then trying to just always looking at those 1 or 2 presenters to make us a little bit better. A harder session on a Tuesday afternoon led by our strength and conditioning coach, and then we would have something of a bit of a social on a Tuesday night. So that's the end of our kind of technical stuff, and then we're by the end of Tuesday we've parked the weekend before, and we're moving into next weekend. We always get Wednesday off, which is nice. Some people going out knock some golf balls around a golf course. We've got some good golfers here. As you said, I practice here as a barrister. I've still got my workload, so I pop into our Paris office to do a little bit of work.
And I noticed you managed to go to Longchamp. Was it the other day as well? Was it?
That was one of our days off, Kirky. Yeah, we did manage to do the Prix d'Arc de Triomphe, which was pretty special. And so you get those those days off where you are able to let your hair down. But then by Thursday you're preparing again. So I think we've spoken about this before, Kirky. Like the first 10 days when you're in camp is really intense because you're training hard, you're reviewing, you're preparing, you're meeting the coaches to set what the standards will be for the tournament. This 40 game window is bloody hard work, because you are constantly on the move. You're going, you're toing and froing from different grounds. You're reviewing, you're preparing, you're responding to coaches. And then after this weekend, obviously we've got three weekends left, but that's when, you know, you get that big chunk of break in the middle. So it's a constant theme. We're as close as ever as a group that I've seen at the World Cup. This is my 5th World Cup, as you said, and you know, there aren't splinter groups as you sometimes kind of find. It's a close group who really challenge each other, you know, which I think is always a good sign of a strong team. People who are willing to say, like, I actually disagree with how you did this, and these are the reasons why. So I think we're a strong team, but we respect each other, and it's done in the right way. But we also have a bit of fun, and we like a good sing song and a glass of wine at the right time.
Breakfast
and a nice tonic drink with that.
Yeah, exactly. I just wonder. I wonder if I can ask this question. You know, there was a lot of fallout for Matt Carley, English referee, after the Wales-Fiji game, and yet had Fiji had they held on to the ball, not knocked on and scored and beaten Wales, no one would have mentioned anything about any earlier decisions in the game, and that's tough. And you know, knowing Matt, again, only human. Somewhere, someone will have got into him. How much arm putting round do you do as a group as well? You know, in terms of, can I just say you're a father figure in that group now, given 109. In fact, between us, we've got 110 internationals, you and me, Wayne. How many have you done?
109, Kirky.
Yeah. But I just wonder, you know, how much they look up to people like yourself.
It's quite scary that he's a father figure, really, isn't it, Kirky? I mean, goodness me.
Well, there's a lawsuit somewhere, but
oh, look,
and I'm not just singling him out. Everybody's
what I've seen at other World Cups is we've all seen different kind of World Cup, you know, big moments when the referees get dragged into the spotlight. 07 was me, 11 was probably Bryce, and then 15 was probably Craig. 19 World Rugby sent a statement out after about 10 games to say all the refereeing is crap, which I thought was
here's a bus. Let's throw it throw them all under it.
I thought it was pretty harsh because I hadn't refereed by that point, which I thought was when they said
it was a fair comment.
Yeah. So we're only as good as our kind of our weakest game. And so we all want each other to do well, and you also want it from a personal point of view. And particularly, you know, you take Matt had some criticism of that game. He's a mate, you know, he's someone who, you know, I train with every week. I want to do well, and so to see him kind of hurting is really sad. So we want everyone to do well. So when there is a need to put an arm around someone, or you know, or to bring them into your room and have a glass of wine and say how you're feeling, because and particularly blokes are crap at this, Kirky. You know, blokes don't check in on each other. Blokes don't say how are you doing, because we're all macho, and even me, you know, this 88 kilo 6'3" gangly thing where we all pretend to be macho, whereas actually someone just saying how you doing is sometimes all that's needed. Just allow people to chat things through. And yeah, I guess as the old man of the group, people seek me out sometimes because I've probably been through it. I know what it feels like, and I can tell them my stories about my personal board, and I can tell them about not reading social media. They mightn't listen to it, but I can give them some advice from someone who's been there and is probably hurt.
I mean, you said the old man. Let me just, George. Let me just say, George, you alluded to the fact he's got facial hair now. It's only because it's dropped off the top of his head if you see him on telly. So, anyway, sorry, George. Penalty spot.
It just gets better and better. Look, 20 years at the top, Barnsley, it's an incredible achievement, and you know, and to the tenacity and resilience that takes is quite something. I'd love, firstly, to hear about how you've coped with a lot of the changes, particularly technological changes that have come along. I mean, you know, when you first started, I think we still called them touch judges, not ARs, you know, and they had far fewer powers than they do now. We certainly didn't have TMOs, and now, of course, we've got everything from a TMO to a bunker to reviews to all sorts of things. I mean, you've seen it all come through, and so I'd love to understand kind of how you're able to adapt, because it's something that we have to do in business all the time, adapt to the changes that are coming your way, but also the resilience around that. So, you know, it often doesn't go right first time, And there, you know, there's certain, you know, famous commentators that say things like never miss twice. You make a mistake once, but don't make it twice. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you cope with the change that comes along, because they seem to be coming quicker and quicker and quicker in the game.
So really good question, and I think there's two kind of points. I remember having a conversation with Eddie Jones when he first became the England coach. So we're talking 6 or 7 years ago, and we were talking just in general. And he said the best players that he's ever worked with are the ones at the start of their career who have no fear, because they don't really understand everything that they're going into, the politics of an organization or the politics of rugby. They just play as they believe they should play. And then you get the players at the end of their career who actually don't give a shit, because they're really comfortable in their own skin. They're really comfortable with the advice that they put around them. And it's just that bit in the middle where you listen to too many people. And he said, and I think referees are the same. And I couldn't agree with him more. Like the start of my career, I was just so excited to be there. I just did what I thought was natural, which was allow the game to go. And now at the end of my career, I'm really clear in how I want the game to kind of be refereed. And I really want the game. I don't want any stoppages. I want to try and encourage the game to go. And I'm really clear in that. And I think why I've been quite lucky is that middle bit was pretty bumpy. I tried to listen to too many people, listen to too many coaches, listen to too many selectors. But what I've never been sure of is when I'm going to retire. So I thought I was maybe going to retire at 15. So I was pretty kind of, I enjoyed 2015. And I was certain I was going to retire after 19, so I was kind of relaxed going into that. And now I am going to retire after this World Cup. So again, I've
breaking news. Breaking news.
Yeah, it's official. My goodness.
So that period that I've extended at the end has definitely helped me. But back to that idea of having people around me who I trust. So I don't think in whatever organization you can please everyone. So put people around you whose opinions you value and whose opinions, will challenge you and trust. So that's definitely one thing. That's given me longevity. The idea of how things always evolve is I'm always looking at a way, people ask what high performance is. To me, it's really clear. It's how do I get better, slightly better each day. So in this tournament, there's obviously a gap in the use of the bunker. We hadn't used the bunker before. So how do we make sure that you at home, George and Kirky and everyone on this call, understands what's going on in this bunker? Because there's been some decisions where it comes back as a yellow card or red card, and I'm sitting there as a someone who's involved in it, thinking I'm not quite sure how they got there. So what I want to do, and I definitely want to try and keep kind of trying to get better at during this tournament, is when I yellow card someone and stick them on review, when it comes back, I want you at home to understand why it's still a yellow card or why it's a red card, because it shouldn't be like a dirty secret. So I'm always looking for little 1%ers just to make me a little bit better. And I think the communication that a referee can do around that is something which can kind of drive you forward. So just constantly looking, whether it's through a way that I train, a way that I hydrate after a match. I've probably improved on that. I'm not sure, 10 Castle Lights was my best kind of attempt.
Could have gone for 12
things which get me better. So that's what I'm looking at doing, and that's what I'll continue to do for the next. Well, I may not have any more games left, but if I have, I'll look.
Sure, you do. I'm absolutely sure you do. But go on, Kirky.
No, I was going to say that's a really good point. You've made your mind up now, and I'm sure nothing will change your mind for you. Yet it did in 2011, 2015. So, how have you approached this World Cup differently to the 4 previous ones for you personally? Knowing the decision you've made, and there's a kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, and guess there's going to be some sort of bereavement almost that you're going to have at the end of this when you walked away from the dressing room environment and your mates and everything.
And so the main reasons that I'll finish refereeing, and this isn't a statement that I am retiring, by the way, because obviously I'll get in a lot of trouble if I make that statement on the INN8 webinar.
There's only 900 people here. Don't worry.
I'm sure my secret is safe. The one thing that people perhaps don't understand about refereeing, because why would you, is that every game's an away game. So every Monday I find out.
Not according to the crowd. Some of the crowds, Barnsley, you homer.
It's all right if it's Harlequins, I must admit, because I live walkable distance from Harlequins. But every game's an away game. So I am constantly traveling. I also don't know where that game is until the Monday. So if you think about your weekend, Kirky, you've got a rough idea where you are for the next 3 weeks. And you can decide whether you're having some mates around on Saturday night. You can decide whether you're going on a stag weekend in 3 weeks' time. You can decide whether you're going out for a beer with the missus on a Friday, because you can plan that. I can't plan my life until a Monday. And that eventually takes its toll.
And you've got a young family as well, haven't you? So.
Yeah, 9 and a 6-year-old. So eventually that takes a toll, so you can have a call at the end of July saying you are going to South Africa for 3 weeks in September. Now, that's great if you're a single person and you don't have any commitments. But as soon as you have family commitments, there's different priorities in life. So to get that certainty back is really essential for me. And that's something that I definitely want, and definitely is one of the big drivers. If someone could pick me up and drop me in the middle of Ellis Park to referee the Springboks against the All Blacks, and then I was zapped back out of there, I'd carry on doing it. I'm not sure my legs would, but I would love to carry on doing it, because there is something special about doing those games, but it's the sacrifice that goes with it. So this is the right time to finish. As I approach it differently, exactly the same as 2019. I think I've matured over those. The first World Cup, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Really enjoyed it. 2011 was a difficult World Cup with me because of the fallout from New Zealand in 2011. Whereas I think we've all been really welcomed by the French kind of public. I found 2011 a real really difficult, because I was still public enemy number one. 2015 was amazing because it was my home World Cup. I was allowed to show off London and England with the amazing kind of country and city that they are. But 19, I went into it just saying, I'm just going to enjoy the games, and if I progress and I referee later in the tournament, I referee late in the tournament. But I'm going to have fun with my mates. I'm going to work my backside off physically and mentally during matches, and that's what I've done in 2023. I'm not thinking, but I literally could have refereed I know, You say
you don't know the knockout games yet, do you?
We don't know.
No.
So I may have refereed my last game of rugby, and
Right.
and if that's the case, I enjoyed last night.
You'll get pissed the next 3 weeks.
Yes, you've got a nice holiday in France coming.
What do you think your legacy will be, if there is such a thing, after you retire? I mean, on the assumption you may retire, what would your legacy be?
May.
Legacy is a big word, but I hope what I've kind of what I've brought. I remember doing a Q&A with a few other international referees, maybe 12 years ago. A couple of Irish referees and people who I respected, and another English referee. And the question was asked: are you in competition with each other? And I was ready to say, no, this is great. We're all looking after each other. And to a man, and it was all men, they said, yeah, we all want the big game, and we're all in competition. And I was devastated. I was like, shit, I've got this wrong. Maybe I should be competitive. Maybe I shouldn't be telling my trade secrets about, how I kind of talk to people, or who I use as my scrum coach, or, what I say in difficult situations. But I thought, bollocks to that. That's just a pile of crap. I'm going to try and get everyone better. And if everyone gets, 10% better because of my help, then that idea of you're only as bad as your weakest game, then it's going to make the whole tournament better. So if what I hope I've done is always shared everything. And I think I presented to the PwC new board about 2 years ago. And how the PwC board works is that they have heads of different kind of sectors, and then one of them ends up as the managing partner. And it's almost like a 2-year kind of trade-off, where people kind of perform, and the current managing partner almost makes this. And when I presented to them, I found it quite eerily. It felt a little bit like us, coming to a World Cup. There's only 12 of us refereeing at this World Cup, and one of us will get that important job. Now, you could sit here in this room, and I could just try and screw over everyone else when I run touch, and I could not share my trade secrets. I could just sit at the back of the classroom and say nothing. And those 12 individuals who were looking for that kind of managing partner role at PwC could do the same. They couldn't share best practice. They could decide, they're going to undermine their colleagues. But I challenged them that day, and this is what I challenged our group of 12, is if you get everyone else better, you will have to get better. So you know, by sharing your words of wisdom, by sharing what works best for you, I'll tell you what, it drives performance through the roof. And so that's what, if there's a bit of a legacy, it's leaving nothing left unsaid, I suppose, Kirky.
Barnsley, I think I mean, the people who make it to the top, and so there's hundreds, thousands of referees around the world, and it's just a cross section of society. Some are really good, some are not so good. We're all just trying to improve and do the very best for the game because we enjoy the game's values, we enjoy what it stands for, we enjoy everything that comes with it, right? But it tends to be that the cream rises to the top. I've never met people who've made it to the top of rugby refereeing who are idiots who I can't get on with. You do tend to find that those guys that make it tend to be the guys who are collaborative, who are inclusive, who do want to have a team spirit. Even though people feel it's an individual sport, there's no way it's an individual sport being a referee. It's most definitely a team sport. And those people who play that game very well seem to do the best. It's just how it works. And I think that's the same in most instances. As soon as you start playing the politics, you tend to not actually start to rise to the top. I mean, is that your experience?
I massively believe in that. And I believe that I'm sure we've seen it in business where you're like, how is that knobhead got I'm not looking at you when I say that, Kirky.
No, and yet you're still refereeing. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? There's people who just have different personalities to me, different ways of managing people to me. And I'm sure we've all done it. We're like, really? But I honestly think that longevity and legacy is left by people who actually are trying to get everyone else better around them.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Can I come in here? Because we've only got about 3 or 4 minutes left. And Wayne, you've got to go. I've got to go. And George, I think you've got to go as well. But I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned about earlier, it was all men then. Well, we're starting to see that change now, thankfully, in terms of diversity. Joy Neville, for instance, the World Cup. It's a great positive move, isn't it, in terms of match officiating? We're seeing great examples of in teams, the women's rugby is exploding now. And it's really important. I mean, George was one of the forerunners, if you like, in terms of female officiating. But to me, actually, it's not a female official. It's an official who happens to be a female. That's,
Thanks, Kirky.
That's all right. You were crap, but it doesn't matter. But genuinely, it's a good thing to see for the game, isn't it, Wayne?
Without doubt. Like anyone who thinks that having a board of white middle class men making decisions and gets a real breadth of thought and opinion are bloody deluded. But I still see that part of my job as a lawyer, I often go in and do reviews and do cultural reviews. And the amount of times I'm like, have you look at the makeup of your board, or have you look at the makeup of your kind of senior management team? It's not rocket science. Like, you think about some of the best conversations that you ever have. It's not, and I mean challenging conversations. I don't mean pissed around a bar with your mates. But the most challenging ones are when you've got diversity of thought, and you don't get that by all being the same. Because it's just not. So it's great to have different kind of voices in the room for this World Cup. And remember, Joy's not here as a female official. She's here because she's one of the best 25 officials in the world.
100%.
And you are right. And George would be slightly embarrassed by this, but she was one of the forerunners of female officiating. And there's a reason now why we've got hundreds and hundreds, because people were willing to go out there, roll their sleeves up, take a bit of shit, take a bit of people rolling their eyes to say, another female official getting over promoted. But that was just people who just weren't good enough who would say that. So people like George, like Sarah Cox, like Sarah Stanley in England, but like Amy Perrott in Australia. Those are the ones who are taking this kind of female officiating to a different level, and bloody hell, they're gonna have some different skill sets to me. So the more the better I'm gonna learn.
You talk about me taking a bit of shit. I seem to remember, Barnsley, you gave me a bit of shit once because you organised for me to referee a naked rugby match, if I remember rightly, in Switzerland. I think I still need to pay you back for that. I was very glad. I was actually very grateful because you did allow one side to keep their socks on, which helped.
Where were they wearing their socks, though?
Yeah, no, it's just on their feet.
Yeah, exactly.
Scrums were interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, no going down in the front row. So look, I just wanted to kind of finish with, we've got 2 minutes. Wayne, looking back, you've had a fantastic career, and long may it continue, whether it's at club level, international level, whatever level you decided, maybe at kids or whatever. If you look back over your career, is there anything you would change now, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I probably would, not from an officiating point of view. I'd always, there's a few things that I'd always wanted to do, and I've ticked off over the last couple of years. One of them, most recently, and I'm not saying this because it's a South African kind of webinar, but I'd always wanted to referee at Kings Park, and I did that in April of this year. It was one of the stadiums which I remember growing up. I came across to referee in Durban in about 99, 2000. Love my time in Durban. So my closest friends in South Africa are from Durban. And I always wanted to referee at KP. So that was one of the things I wanted to tick off. So all of those things that I wanted to do, I've probably done in officiating. But I probably, and this is where I think there's a challenge for the next management, is making sure that referees don't have to be as selfish around time with family. I think there have been times which we're all guilty of, and I'm sure we're all guilty of in any job, in where you're sacrificing time away with your family just to kind of follow your goal. And I think I would be a bit more selfish if I had my time again, and that's what I challenge the younger refs now, some of them who don't have children, to say sometimes it's okay to say no, but also to the management of this group, sometimes asking someone to go on a 6-week trip after they've just come back from a 3-week trip isn't acceptable, because of course we all want to perform, and if your boss says to you, you need to do this, well, you do it. Of course you do. We've all done that. But being asked that question sometimes is a bit shitty. So I would be a bit selfish, and if I ever get in a position where I am involved in management, and that's not my next role, by the way, I will definitely be challenging that group to say we've got to stop asking people to do the that sacrifice of the family, because it is too much.
Brilliant. Look, we're out of time. I think I'm right in saying, and I'm sorry for those questions we didn't quite manage to get to, and apologies for that. But George, I think you'll agree, it's been a great session. Lovely to have Wayne on again, and hopefully, for those of you who've never heard him speak before, it would change your perception of him a little bit, as to actually there's a bloke behind the whistle, not just some bloke you want to abuse as a keyboard warrior. George, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you to both of you. Listen, it's been an absolute joy to be reunited with you two again. I know we chat every so often on WhatsApp, and it's always fun, but it's lovely to see you both in the flesh, virtually, so to speak.
I'm going to go put some trousers on now.
Yeah, thanks. That I wish you would.
Oh, no,
just stay sitting, please. Happy Boca Friday to everyone who's watching. Thank you very much for coming to see us today. Quick reminder that we've got another webinar on the 18th of October. It's all about Immigration 101. Get the facts about what options are available to anyone considering a second passport or a move overseas. This is going to be a really great webinar, and I think a really good technical one that will be good to subscribe to. The link is in the chat.
Bardi, that will help you with your move to France, with your new house from the French Federation.
Yeah, if you can just keep putting the Super Brew through the I WhatsApp you, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. Thanks, Barnsley. It really just leaves for me to say thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure to see you again. Best of luck for the rest of the World Cup, Barnsley. I cannot wait to see you in the middle in the final. I don't think England have got a chance to make it to the final, so let's hope there's at least one Englishman in the middle. Great, thank you so much. Best of luck, guys. Boca Friday.
INN8 is a registered trademark of Stanlib Wealth Management Pty Limited, an authorized financial services provider.